Hi. I thought I would just take a bit of time to talk about how we can address the issues of a death with a child or young person. Many of us with this pandemic will be having really difficult conversations that we hoped we would never have to have. And we can feel overwhelmed and concerned about how we're going to manage, how on earth can we break this terrible news. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time to share my knowledge of this subject and to hopefully give you some reassurance. So you may also like to look on my YouTube channel. There are a series of films about what children understand about death, just me talking to the camera, at different ages and stages of development. So you may want to have a look at those because they could be helpful. But I suppose the first thing to do is to give a little bit of thought to how and when you're going to break this news. And I would say in general, the sooner the better that you are able to tell someone. And I think the reason for that is that children are very sensitive and they will sense when something is wrong. The adults around them, it's part of our survival mechanism to sense danger, and children are very perceptive if there is tension or stress around them. So they will sense that something is wrong. And if they then find out that something has happened and they haven't been told, then that can actually make them feel really quite insecure. What else has happened that I haven't been told? They learn that perhaps they're not always told the truth straight away. So it's important that we try to address it as soon as we can. Also, with social media these days, we don't always have a choice about the best scenario to break bad news in. We just have to go with it because otherwise they're going to find out the less pleasant way. So another time factor, I suppose, is making sure that you've got time to have a conversation that's not going to be rushed. At the moment, we seem to have plenty of time on our hands, but that's important. And making sure that you are emotionally available, so you're not too preoccupied by other things that you have to do. So making time and making yourself available, and also thinking about privacy. So turning off your phone, turning off other phones, or shutting down laptops, asking the young person to put their phone down, asking other people in the household, if there are other people in the household, to give you some privacy. And you may want to think about the environment in which this conversation is going to take place. You may be more comfortable in bedroom, more public area of the home, or if there's somewhere nice in the garden and the weather's good, you've got a garden. Just thinking about where the best place is going to be. And beyond that, I think making sure that you are ideally seated somewhere comfortable, so there doesn't feel like there's a rush. Plenty of eye contact and physical proximity will help that child feel safe. And if they want to be cuddled, a cuddle. But I suppose it's really frightening for us. Will we feel overwhelmed by the emotions, our own emotions? And will they be overwhelmed? And will we then feel powerless? So these are the fears that come. And how on earth are we going to find the words? What do I say? And I suppose from that point of view, I can reassure you that what a child really needs is an adult who will talk to them directly and listen to them and be emotionally available to them. And really, nobody's going to do a perfect job. This is not a perfect situation. It's the worst has happened. No, this is not something you can fix. This is not something that can be made okay by you saying it in a particular way. It's awful. And I think if you accept that you are in it together and that you're there to support the child, then that actually is the most important thing. So how do you start? You know, where do we start? I would say get yourself into this position, ask the child to come and talk to you, and then start by laying the ground quickly. We're not going to, you know, meander around the subject. You might start with something like, you know that whoever Auntie Lynn has been ill and in hospital, or you know that the doctors have been really, really worried about Daddy or whatever. And the child would probably say yes. Because usually we have some sort of expectation of what's happening at the moment. Obviously, if it's a shock, then we have to introduce that information. But, you know, do you remember what I told you? Is a good way to start. So this is where we're going. And then giving them a little bit of a warning so they can brace themselves. So unfortunately, I've got some really awful news to tell you today. Something really sad has happened. You're obviously going to have to make it age appropriate because children of 4 or 5 can be very different from much older ones. And actually, even really young children, you should be telling even really young children. So saying, I've got some really sad news, and then using the words. Not using a euphemism, not so and so passed away or went to sleep or is no longer with us or we've lost them, because these are not things that children can understand. They may not understand the metaphor, and it might really confuse them. So you need to use the words. The person has died. Unfortunately, we heard today that so and so has died. They're no longer alive, they have died. And it may feel really harsh. And when I'm training, people often say, are you sure? Should we just say it like that? But actually, it is the kindest thing. It's a little bit like pulling off a plaster. You just have to do it. You just have to get the fact out there. There's no softening that. You can do it in a good way, but you can't actually cushion the impact of somebody dying. It's part of life, and it's part of our human experience, whether you're a child or an adult. And that's why it's so difficult for us, I think, because we just wish it wasn't the case and that we could fix it. And we're used to sorting problems out for children. We sort of tend to expect it of ourselves, don't we? But, you know, you may be surprised at how they react. And this is something to say, you in your mind, you probably think they're going to burst into tears and be inconsolable. But in fact, sometimes children just skip off and say, oh, okay, see you later. Or they might get very, very angry. Or they might even laugh. Or they might act as if they haven't heard it. And that can be a real shock for you. So I'm telling you now, don't worry, because these are all normal reactions. They all come under the umbrella of normal, whatever normal is. They're not uncommon. And I guess what you have to do is to say, okay, well, it's been a shock. I get that it's been a shock. We'll come back to this later. We'll talk about this later when you're ready. And don't pull them back and hammer the point home, because they've gone into a defensive response, and people have defenses because they need them. So it's the child's way of absorbing and coping with really drastic news. But it also might be, particularly with young children, that they don't really understand what death is and the permanence of death. So it doesn't seem like big news. So try not to worry too much about that. There isn't it isn't like, you know, a one-off conversation that's got to be done and dusted and you've got the message over. You can return to this, although you may not want to and it's uncomfortable. You can return to this if that is what the child needs. And I would recommend that you make sure that you do return to it at times anyway, so that they feel that they have the opportunity to talk things through. So be prepared for that. And just let them know that you're going to be there when they are ready to talk about things. So let's have a think about what some of the useful approaches and some of the less useful approaches are. First of all, I think it's really important that you encourage them to verbalise their feelings, and they may not have the words, So you might wonder with them, I wonder if you're feeling really angry, or I wonder if you're feeling really upset by that. And wondering is really helpful because it leaves space for them to say, no, I don't feel angry, I feel whatever. So wondering is a good thing, and then you're also introducing the words and the vocabulary if they find it difficult to express themselves, as many young children do. They may also experience the response physically. So very often it is a sort of a physiological response. So it might be a headache, it might be feeling sick, or it might be dizzy. And young children often experience physical sensations, and that's normal. And that brings me on to the next thing, which is about saying to a child, this is perfectly normal, and making sure that they understand that all feelings are normal. You know, in the next few days, you may well feel angry, sad, you might even feel relieved. Now, if a child has been aware of a lot of stress and strain about a situation, now the situation has come to a conclusion. Not a good one, obviously, but they may not have an understanding of what that means. But it might be relief. And saying to a child, you don't have to feel guilty about whatever you're feeling. So explaining that they're going to probably be a mixture of emotions and that all of it is okay. And it's also okay to feel okay. They don't have to feel guilty if they're not crying all the time. And that's important because children sort of jump in and out of these emotional states. That one minute they might be crying because they've had a really sad thought, but the next minute they want to watch something on TV, or they're, you know, skipping in the garden. So these are things that you know, you can introduce and you can explain to them. A lot of children are going to ask questions. They might range from quite sort of technical questions about the illness or about where the person's body is. They might be deeper philosophical questions, huge questions. What happens when you die? Will they be all right? Can they see me? Do they know I'm here? What, you know? So these are questions that, I mean, you know, the philosophical ones, we may feel we have answers. And if we're in a faith tradition and we feel that this is an opportunity to share our faith, which might then be a support to our child, then that's actually really important. I think that's important that you do that. But explaining that different people believe different things, and then perhaps encouraging them to think about, well, what do you think? What do you think might happen? So that you leave it open for them to explore their thoughts and their ideas with you. With the more technical questions, you may not have the answers, and you may need to say, look, I don't know. So when I've got more information, I'll share it with you. It might be that they're asking you questions, and this is sometimes the case where particularly sometimes autistic children will want really technical detail about what's happened, and it can be upsetting to have to keep repeating it. And in that case, you know, finding a way to say, look, I will make sure that your questions get answered, but right now I can't do this, so we'll come back to it another time. Is important. And you may be able to get, if it's a medical question, you may be able to get a GP to answer the questions. So obviously rather busy at the moment, but have a think about whether there's a possibility, if you know somebody who might know the answer to your question, or talking to a doctor who is involved at an appropriate time when they have time to give to you and the child. So another really important thing that must be covered is it's very important to say to a child, you know, when somebody dies of an illness like this, it's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. These things happen. They're awful. It's horrible, but it's nothing that you or I or anyone has done. And that's really important because children can, with their sort of egocentric view of the world, they can end up taking responsibility and feeling responsible for the person dying. And that can be so harmful psychologically. We may not know what's going on. So even though they haven't said anything that makes you think that they blame themselves, it's really important to verbalise that. This is not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. This is just a really unfortunate thing that happens. Sometimes people do get ill and sometimes people die. And it's also important to say that so many people who have got it are getting better. And so it isn't going to be too scary for them. And that's the thing, to remember to keep it in perspective, because often with this comes that realization that everybody can die and everybody can get this illness, but reminding them that, you know, most people won't die, even if they get it. I suppose allowing the child to see that you are also sad or feeling whatever you're feeling is important, as long as they can see that you're not overwhelmed. So we model grief to children, and they will copy how our behaviour, because that's how they learn, isn't it? And so in terms of emotional regulation, they need to see that, yeah, it's normal for people to be sad, and actually it's right that we're sad because we love that person. But we're not overwhelmed by it, and then they don't need to be frightened that you're overwhelmed, but they can see that if you can bear it, then it is bearable, that they will be safe and that they will be okay. Unhelpful things. Try to distract a child. I mean, at times there will be times perhaps when it's not appropriate to have a conversation and you need that power of distraction. But if you're distracting a child in order to avoid sharing information with them, or avoid, they will get the message that they mustn't express themselves or they mustn't feel what they're feeling. So it's really important not to use distraction as an avoidance. Also trying to cheer a child up. Come on, G up. Not really helpful, because then again, it's not going to stop them from feeling sad, but now they feel like they can't share it with you because it's not acceptable to you how they're feeling. Another thing is that some children just won't want to talk. They won't want to talk, and adolescents quite often like this. They won't want to talk to parents. So you might want to find somebody that they might want to talk to, perhaps just providing them with online counselling support, or another relative perhaps that they can talk to, and suggest that they get in touch with them if they want to, because they might be protecting you from being upset as well and seeing how upset they are. But you know, whatever's normal, I suppose what you're looking for is changes. If your child was never one to talk about how they feel, they're not going to suddenly have a personality change. So don't be worried that they're not talking about it or they're not crying, if that's just the way that they usually are. And the other thing to do is to avoid using judgmental language. So saying things like, oh, Granny will be so proud of you for being so brave, or don't cry, you know, Uncle wouldn't want you to be sad, is really unhelpful, because again, they're giving the message that it's not okay to have your feelings. They will feel sad still, but then they'll also feel guilty, like they're letting somebody down. So judgmental language is to be avoided. And also, finally, I think there's a tendency, sometimes we say, you know, well, I remember when I lost so-and-so, I felt like that. And actually, if we go too much into how we feel or how we felt about a loss or a death in the past, the child can get the message that actually they can sometimes, particularly with sort of caretaking personalities, that they will try to protect you then from feeling upset. So they will withdraw and not talk to you. And that's the opposite of what you're trying to get them to do. So I hope that that's been helpful. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Check out the other short videos, and I hope that this has been helpful. And just to say that this conversation, breaking the news, is not a one-off conversation. It's really important, if you could do one thing, it's to let your child know that they can approach the subject and come to you. And actually, you checking in with them and raising the subject a few times the next few days is going to be important, that they get that message that you're open to talk. I will probably do some more videos, maybe one about how to remember people in the absence of being able to go to a funeral. If you find this useful, please share it, because so many parents are going to be in the same boat. And my heart goes out to you. Good luck, and thank you.